Welcome. I'm Clark Pena and I'm your host for the Advocates Corner. Today, we're going to be talking about a very, very serious issue that's affecting all New Yorkers in our great city. We're going to be talking about saving lives, and in order to get the whole idea and the whole gist about saving lives, we have with us a very special guest, Andrew Noble, and he is the president of Sensys Gatso Group. Sir,
Clark. How are you?
Thank you for joining us.
Good
You came from far away.
Good, Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston, Mass.
Boston, Massachusetts, just up the road.
Just up the road. Well, sir, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today to educate us, because this program is about educating the public.
Pleasure.
And also at times educating our elected officials. Sensys Gatso. Tell us all about it.
We are a global company. We're headquartered in Sweden. We've been around now for just over 62 years.
Oh my.
And we're working in around about 60 countries around the world. For the very most part, globally, we make our own technology, which is traffic enforcement safety cameras. We sell them to nation states and help those nation states enforce rules on their road through traffic technology. Here in the United States, we actually provide our own technology, work with cities, states, and counties to provide automated photo enforcement for speed enforcement, typically red light enforcement, don't drive in the bus lane enforcement, things like that. Okay. And here in the US, we run the whole program. We install the technology, we manage the quality of the images, we look up where people live through the registered owner information, we send the citation notices, we collect any fine revenue, dispersing it to the city clients, we organize any contested ticket court cases, and basically, Clark, just to ensure that due process is carried out for everybody's benefit. Excellent.
We were talking earlier, it's not about the penalty phase, it's about changing behavior. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, changing driver behavior is really what photo enforcement's meant to be about. I know that there are some sound bites and talking heads suggesting it's all about the money. And for sure, the byproduct of somebody speeding or running through a red light is going to be revenue generated from that infraction. But the reality is, by people paying penalties or being aware of cameras we're hoping they'll drive better. So through a combination of signage, public information campaigns, the cameras are there to help us maintain a rule of law on the roads.
I'm already sold. I'm already sold. I saw in preparation that there's a lot of black and white pictures.
Started by a man in the Netherlands called Maurice Gatsenaides. He was a famed European racing driver and a rally driver at that time. And essentially he took a speed measuring device he designed for his own self-improvement, and at the request of the Dutch government at the time in the late 50s, put a camera on the front end of it and created the world's first speed camera, and that was in 1960.
1960.
To your point, back in those days, cameras were film-based, black and white. Things have changed a lot since then, but the premise of the technology is still the same now as it was 62 years ago. It's taking great quality photographs born from accurate detection of what a vehicle shouldn't be doing and creating an image we can use for evidentiary packets.
As we're discussing, there's some video being played for our viewing audience. How quickly, once, I guess you need to get government approval to bring that type of great service into a certain area. What's the time between the process and having those cameras in place to save lives?
Well, it depends on where you are in the country, but to your point, state enabling legislation, city ordinances have to be in place before photo enforcement can be used. But typically, from the decision of a city to move forwards with a certain type of enforcement, it's around about 4 to 8 months, depending on where you are in the country and what hoops and hurdles you have to jump through, either at the state legislature level or the local city ordinance and permitting.
You're in place in Boston?
We're headquartered in Massachusetts, just north of Boston, yep.
And your cameras are up there? Or?
Massachusetts does not have any enabling legislation allowing for photo enforcement to operate at this time. So we don't have any cameras in our home state. The nearest cameras to our office in Massachusetts are in neighboring Albany, in the upstate New York. We have the red light cameras in the state capital. We recently went live with the school zone speed enforcement program Buffalo, New York, on the western side. And then south of us in Rhode Island, the smallest state in the Union, Clark, we have school zone cameras there and red light enforcement cameras too.
What has been the feedback?
Thus far, very, very positive.
Very positive,
I think
yes.
certainly in the cities that are new to photo enforcement, that haven't had it before, they are taken aback at just how widespread the problem is, with people essentially fearlessly driving through school zones at a speed that far exceeds the posted speed limit. And I don't think it's until you have accurate technology on your streets that you can really see for yourself how bad the problem is. We all know from our own lives, anecdotally, how people are driving in our neighborhood and our streets, past our schools. But until you actually measure it objectively, all the time, you don't really have a sense of how good or bad it really is. And I think to that question, our clients are very surprised to have their eyes open for the reality of what's been happening on their streets for some time in the past.
Well, I know you're probably aware we've had a lot of unfortunate deaths in New York City due to distracted drivers or speeders. Most of those investigations are still in the preliminary phase. But can your system create a safe way, if you will, for these type of issues that are happening? Can we get some type of good feel out of this?
I think any measure we put in, a community puts into place to change driver behavior is going to have an incremental effect on the environment in which we live in. And speed cameras in school zones, to your point, are a part of that. But they're not the Elysian fields of the silver bullet solution in the future. What we need to do is have a comprehensive discussion around different attributes of how we can change the way we drive, how we can change the way we educate young people on walking around our neighborhoods. And collectively, that conversation does involve some level of enforcement, and our cameras are part of that.
How does this work?
Right. Because the average person on the street just sees the camera on the pole and they have no clue how it works, right? It's born from detection. How do we detect a car or a truck is doing something it shouldn't be doing? For our side, on our technology, we have a very accurate 3D tracking radar, which through radar technology basically sees vehicles moving past it, coming towards it, that it can track up to 36 vehicles at any one time. And so the radar gets a very accurate map of what the cars are doing, what they're likely to do in terms of speeding past a camera or likely to run the red light. Connected to that radar and the tracking mechanisms behind it is a very powerful piece of software with some great algorithms which are working, and that triggers the camera. And so the camera then takes a photograph at the precise moment the radar wants it to capture the vehicle in the frame. We also have concurrent video working at the same time as the still image cameras, so we have some more contextual information about what was happening in the environment at the time. When somebody receives a notice of violation in the mail, for them it's a piece of paper with some photographs on it. There's not much context to it.
Okay.
We take video at the same time with the idea that you can go into a website, look at the images, but also run the video and see what you did. And the video itself provides that powerful context that I think not only cements the idea that this is a real violation, but I think it reinforces the information campaign back to the violator themselves, the drivers. Look, this is how you're driving. You may not think you're driving this way, but here it is on tape. And I think that's a very important piece of the technology.
It focuses, it zooms in on the driver, when they're committing that alleged act of. Is that how it works? If the driver's on the phone,
right? So from a standpoint of a speed camera, we all know from our personal cell phones, you have a large field of view of the camera, and you can zoom in to pick up some detail. And it's the same with our technology. High pixel still image cameras. that get the whole scene of the event, and we zoom in to capture the license plate of the vehicle.
Okay.
But to your question about drivers themselves, distracted driving and identifying when drivers are using phones is an exciting part of where this technology is going forwards. I think for the last many decades, people have been very used to seeing speed and red light running cameras, but distracted driving is something that's been on all of our minds the last 5 or 6 years in particular. But now it's really in the news all of the time, but now the technology can catch up to that and detect on it too.
I was traveling from Albany last week, and it's incredible that you see so many folks texting or talking.
Yeah.
That is dangerous.
Yeah.
That is dangerous.
Yeah, just a decade ago, distracted driving was you trying to change the channel on your radio and trying to search the right push button. And these days, unfortunately, it's become part and parcel of everyday life for a lot of people, distracted driving. And the statistics that are out there that show how many miles we drive with our eyes off the road are absolutely frightening.
That is also, you can be ticketed for that, am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a moving violation, and state by state we're seeing legislations come out across the world and across the US to prevent you from having your phone in your hand, whether you're calling or texting or frankly watching a movie, which a lot of us have witnessed other people doing.
Right, right.
But having the technology to enforce that's been different, but certainly from our standpoint, we've got some great technology now which is able to detect distracted drivers and create that enforcement ticket that we've been used to seeing for the last many years in speeding and red light running.
Once again, Andrew, changing behavior, correct? That ticket in the mail
Yep.
will tell this person, look, I did wrong and I shouldn't continue to do wrong.
You'd like to think so, and it's certainly part of that education message that we keep trying to reinforce over and over again. I think a lot of people who are involved in texting and driving, for them it was a one-off that moment, a one-off that day. No one's going to catch me. I'll just pick up the text this one time. But we know from a lot of people it comes again and again.
Absolutely. Well, we're being enlightened here today. We're here with Andrew Noble, Sensys Gatso. Folks, they're saving lives. We're going to come right back on this side of the break.
People make mistakes, and those mistakes have consequences. Dramatic consequences. Each day, over 3,500 people die, not through sickness or old age, but through traffic crashes. We battle this every day, a battle against overconfidence and acceptance. We are all excellent drivers in our minds until we actually get behind the wheel and drive. A traffic accident? It happens. It's part of driving in traffic. No. We refuse to accept this. It's our calling to come up with solutions. This is why Gatso refused to accept human measurement errors, and why Sensys fought against the idea that traffic victims are just the reality of sharing the road. A combination of these strengths was clearly meant to be. And so, Sensys Gatso was born, with a joint mission to improve traffic behavior through intelligent, effective, and reliable enforcement all around the world. From clear violation recording to sending out the fine, and from tailor-made products to 5-star maintenance, with our unique software at the heart of it all. This is how we've made traffic enforcement a service, and how we always have the best solutions for all of our customers. Sensys Gatso, making traffic safer.
Facts, only facts. The video was very telling. We have here Andrew Noble, the president of Sensys Gatso Group. Sir, that was very telling video. Tell us a little bit about the numbers that they were talking about. You know, people don't think about that.
Right. You know, in our personal lives, you know, the accident we saw on the way to work today or yesterday, or the story we have to tell from our own experiences of being in traffic crashes, are the ones that we draw from as a benchmark. But the reality is, on a global scale, just here in New York City, the numbers every day can be staggering. And what we have to try and do as a community, whether that's technology providers like ourselves, or legislators, or communities around, the awareness of what we're all trying to do together, is basically bring a better solution for the environment in which we live in. We all deserve to work in a safe environment, to live, to play, and in New York City in particular, where you have such a metropolis of people, with a concentration of cultures and traffic and visual distractions every day, I think the importance of coming together and having that conversation couldn't be more important than they are here in New York City.
Absolutely, and you know, looking at all this issue, I think government really has a responsibility to keep all of us safe, and working alongside your folks. How do we begin that conversation if it hasn't begun as of yet?
Well, legislators work hard, as we all know, many, many hours a day, and they have a lot of topics that they have to bring to their constituents and to discuss as a group, either at the city level or the state level. And it's not always easy for them to be up to speed on the latest developments on any subject matter. But for sure we've seen here in New York City that the legislators have really taken the lead of trying to be a part of the discussion. There's been photo enforcement here in New York City for many, many years now. It hasn't always been popular with some people, but I think the statistics demonstrate that traffic behavior has changed, that people do know the cameras are there, and at the end of the day, for every one life we save, that has to validate the enforcement and the education and the engineering changes being made in the city of New York.
Have you and your team started a educating campaign?
We work closely with our clients to provide video materials, still image materials, statistics from around the world that we've seen from other client nations, or from the World Health Organization, for example. There are many organizations that have statistical studies that come out from time to time on the efficacy and the results seen from photo enforcement. And what we try to do is create a platform of information for our clients to choose from, and we certainly help them with some of the materials they might need for their own public information campaigns.
This is you know, so important, and you're talking about really saving lives,
right.
Changing human behavior. Who's against it?
Well, on the surface, you wouldn't think anyone is, and I think we all value what we're trying to do. But for some people in the world, there is a discussion of privacy. Well, what's happening with that picture of my license plate? Who has access to it? How long are you keeping it for? What are you doing with it? For other people, there's a sense of, well, this is just another camera and it's a cash grab. And as I said before, there's certainly a byproduct of the enforcement is revenues generated. But I don't think that the revenue has to be a dirty word necessarily. If it's put to good use, if it comes back to the community in some way, shape or another to bring good to that community from the revenue generated from the violations seen in the past, I think that could be a good thing. I also think there's space for money not to be generated. How about the concept, for example, Clark, of issuing violations, and if you don't want to pay the fine, you can do maybe 5 or 10 hours of community service. Do
absolutely.
something in your neighborhood for your local residents. That could be a positive thing coming from the cameras, but it doesn't. It talks to the cash grab that people have opposed it.
Right, and that's a great explanation, because for folks that don't want to pay, they can volunteer their time at a non-for-profit organization of family members that have lost children.
Perhaps, yeah.
You know.
I'd love to see something like that put in place somewhere.
You can take the lead on that, sir. You guys are doing great work as it is. What could we as New Yorkers do to bring you guys on board, to bring you here? I would love to have you on the corner of my street, have one of your products on the corner of my street? What can we do as common folk?
Well, I know from my own discussions with the City of New York at various different levels over the last few years, the City of New York has a very progressive viewpoint on what's typically known as Vision Zero, which is the notion to have zero fatalities on roads. Vision Zero is a philosophy born from the Swedish government in the late 90s, where they felt they wanted to put a stake in the ground and make the point that we should have zero deaths on the road for any pedestrians. A lot of work's been gone into the automotive industry in the last 40, 50 years to protect the driver in the car. Safety crumple zones, seat belts, multidisciplined airbags. Cars themselves have become cocoons of comfort, somewhat insulating the driver from the outside world. But not until the last 10 years have we started to think more about the people on the street. What about the pedestrians? Mm-hmm. What about lighting? What about re-engineering the roads to configure a better environment for cohabiting with those vehicles that are traveling at any speed? And I think New York's really led that effort here in the United States for Vision Zero, and certainly it's put a lot of budget behind it, and the legislators themselves have been very much forward in the past. But every day, whether it's a new piece of technology or a new piece of information, any one more thing we can do is always going to make a difference.
It's always going to make a difference, and we want to be able to, it's something I always said with stuff that I've done in the past, is you have to get people young.
Yeah.
Educate them young.
Yeah. Well, certainly, Clark, when I was at school many decades ago, part of our school curriculum was teaching children how to cross the road. It was teaching children how to use pedestrian light control crossings.
That's correct,
It was teaching children how to be aware of the lighting conditions and wear reflective armbands or carrying some sort of mini flashlight. Now, I know life's changed. It's not like it was those decades ago when I was at school. But I wonder if there's a bigger place in our society for educating children, including my own young children, about the traffic around them.
There was an unfortunate death up in East Harlem, where the child was struck by the rear tire of a construction truck, and he was off the sidewalk. Not that the construction driver should be let off the hook, but why was that child off the sidewalk, waiting for the light to change? And I think that we have to get back to the basics, in a way.
Yeah, and I think all too often we talk about distracted drivers, but it's distracted pedestrians as well. I'm not talking to the point of this particular fatality, but people in general. You walk down Broadway in New York City, and how many people are walking towards you with their cell phone in their hand, and they're looking down,
right.
And you're dodging them as they're walking towards you. I'm not worried about bumping into someone in the sidewalk, but I'm certainly worried about that person walking off the curb into a car coming the other way. And so that education talks to not just the drivers, but also the pedestrians and everyone else in the environment, cyclists and pedestrians.
Is there anything in place right now or in the works to educate pedestrians?
On a city-by-city basis, we're not involved in those kind of programs, but I've seen some efforts around the world and certainly in the United States where that's been put into place.
How does speed affect fatalities?
Significantly. Around the world over the last many years, many studies have shown that speed is a significant factor in the fatality rate caused by a pedestrian coming into contact with a vehicle. The benchmark that to keep in mind for most people is essentially if you're hit by a car doing 20 miles an hour, there's an 80% chance you're going to survive that collision. But if you're hit by that same car at 40 miles an hour, there's an 80% chance you're going to succumb to your injuries, or at least have life-changing injuries. And that's a number to remember. It's a fourfold increase in fatalities just by increasing the speed of the car by 20 miles an hour. And at the end of the day, a car hitting a pedestrian is the same physics as a baseball hitting a bat. The harder you throw it, the more you're going to hit that, pitch that ball back. And it's the same with cars. So that's why school zone speed enforcement is always advocated to be a far lower speed limit than the traditional surface streets, because the fatality rate increases even further as the size of the person hit is reduced. So a child getting hit at 20 miles an hour is more likely to have injuries than an adult at 20 miles an hour. So speed and size of the pedestrian come into these things significantly.
It's fatalities, devastating injuries. It's common.
Yeah.
It's common.
I saw a traffic sign recently in a neighborhood not far from me. It said 20 is plenty, but 15 is serene. And I rather like that.
Where is that, in Boston?
Up in Massachusetts.
In Mass?
Yeah.
20, take a picture next time.
20 is plenty,
we'll put it up in New York.
15 is serene. I like that.
We'll put it up in New York. Andrew Noble. This short period of time that we had together, we've learned so much. We hope you come back again.
Yeah, great.
But in closing, that's your camera. Talk to the folks out there, and not only tell them about Gatso, because I approve that message. But slow down. Tell our public what to do.
I think in New York City in particular, where you have this huge visual around us with the many people, the many cars, the many beautiful buildings, and the glittering signs, the visual distractions are there for all of us to succumb to. And I would just advocate for everybody to take a little bit more time in what they're doing, the way they're driving, not using their cell phones, the way they're walking, and paying attention to the surroundings around them. New York City is the metropolis of the world. It's where everybody wants to be. And there's so much good going on here for the increased safety of the citizens and the visitors to the city. And I'd ask everyone to pay attention to what they're doing and to keep doing what they're working on in the community in which they're living.
Outstanding message, sir.
Thank you.
Andrew Noble, Sensys Gatso Group, you guys are God sent. You guys are God sent. You're doing God's work.
Thanks.
And continue to save lives, continue to keep us safe. Look forward to seeing you in New York City.
Thank you for having me today. Look forward to coming back again. Thank you.
Great work, sir. Great work. And thank you so much. Once again, an extremely important program on saving lives. Saving lives. We'll say it again and again and again. We have to save lives. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Clark Pena. Always reminding you, let's take care of yourself. But more importantly, let's take care of each other. Until next time.